welcome in. It is Big Ten Today on a Tuesday. We're thrilled to have you with us. We're presented by Marco's Pizza. Dave Revson, Rafael Davis. Man, this is fun. These few days are really fun because you can look at your bracket and you can rationalize everything that you have chosen.
Yep.
And it all holds up.
Yep. It all makes sense to me.
And then it starts and everything starts getting blown up left and right. But it is exciting, and the Big Ten so well positioned, I think, on both sides, men and women, to break through and win a national championship.
I mean, it feels right. It feels good. It feels like the year to do it. And I know every year everyone's on me. They're talking about I'm Big Ten biased when it comes to the Big Ten tournament. And you're right. I am. I love the Big Ten. But when it comes to this season, it feels warranted. And you look at these 9 teams, I have 5 of them getting all the way to the Elite 8. And I can tell you why, and it will all make sense by the end of this show.
All right. That's a promise, and I know you will deliver on it because you always do. Let's get to our big story. It is the Big Ten in the big dance. 6 teams on Thursday on the men's side, starting early with Ohio State, continuing all the way to the evening with the Fighting Illini, and then 3 more games on Friday. All of those are in the evening on the East Coast anyway. Iowa, Purdue, UCLA, all in action. And so let us start in the West, shall we? And there you see Purdue is the number 2 seed in that West region. They get Queens in St. Louis, Missouri, and then they would likely, well, there's a chance anyway, they take on Missouri. Obviously, Miami is the higher seed there, but Mizzou in Missouri would be a little bit of a tough draw, just given the regional nature of this thing, although St. Louis not too far to drive for Boilermaker fans. Let's get off the geography, though, and get into the games. Purdue, I mean, I think if we would have sat here a week ago, you would have said, man, Purdue is just limping into the postseason. I'm not sure what to make of this team. They were the preseason number 1. They haven't looked the part. They finally looked the part. Yes. And so now the question is, can you continue to look the part, and is this who they're going to be through March and maybe even early April?
Yeah, I think this is who they can be because you look at how they did it in the Big Ten tournament. It was toughness, it was discipline, and it was attention to detail. I mean, you beat Michigan by only making 4 3-pointers in that game. It was just Oscar Clough on the glass, Trey Kaufman-Renn taking care of business inside. So you look at that route in that first game against Queens, I look at Purdue and their size. If they rebound the way they did in Big Ten tournament, they take care of Queens. And I know that's out there in Missouri, but I'm taking Miami to beat Missouri, even out there in their region. So you get to Miami, you look at Trey Donaldson, you look at Malik Renew. This conference is very comfortable with those guys. But when it's a 2-man matchup, I am always taking Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn. That is the John Stockton and Karl Malone of college basketball. And then you fast forward, and then it gets really nice for Purdue. Then you're looking at maybe BYU or Gonzaga, and both of those guys are hurt. You look at BYU without Richie Saunders. You look at Gonzaga without Huff down low. I'm taking Purdue because of their ability to rebound and scheme defensively. I got Purdue going to that Elite 8. I got Purdue reaching the Final Four. They maybe have the best draw in the conference.
Arizona's really good. I mean, I think Arizona, if you look through kind of everyone's brackets, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out at the end. They may end up being the team that the most people choose to win the national championship. But I'm with you. Again, I just think it comes down to this isn't the team that we had seen from Purdue for much of the year. We, as a parent, I always say to my kids, hey, when someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Right.
And Purdue, for quite a while here, showed us who they were, and that who they were included fabulous, historically good offense. By the way, they're now number 1 in the nation.
That's crazy.
In offensive efficiency. They've taken over for Illinois, and we've talked all year about how Illinois is the most efficient offense per KenPom in the KenPom era. Purdue has passed them, but defensively they just weren't there. So can you transform yourself? Because I think it's fair to say defense was the issue last year as well. So it's not like this was just something that all of a sudden manifested itself this year. Can you transform yourself in that way and sustain it through a March run?
The thing I would say even about last year, even right now in the Big Ten tournament, it wasn't the defense. It was the rebounding. Because when you put up a shot, sometimes with Purdue, you get the second chance and then you get a basket because then you're in rotations and then they can't keep up. Because so you look at the Big Ten tournament, the difference between Purdue from the regular season and the Big Ten tournament, yes, they play harder on the defensive end, but they didn't get quicker. They didn't get more athletic. Oscar Clough dominated the ball games, and that was the Oscar Clough that all Purdue fans hope to see coming in this season. And if you're going to get 15, 16, and 10 from Oscar Clough, That's why Purdue's going to make that run.
I'm with you. I think Oscar Clough probably should have been the most outstanding player
sure.
of the Big Ten tournament. That takes nothing away from Braden Smith, who's had an unbelievable career. I just think the difference was they figured out a way to incorporate Oscar Clough for he and Trey Kaufman-Renn to not only coexist but to flourish with both of those guys on the floor. So that, to me, was the difference. I thought Oscar Clough was phenomenal here in Chicago. Speaking of phenomenal in Chicago, how about the backcourt duo of Wisconsin? Boyd and Blackwell were unbelievable. They get high points, and then were they to win that game, there's a really good chance they'd end up taking on John Calipari and Arkansas, who, of course, beat Vanderbilt in the SEC championship game. Again, this is the West, and so Arizona is the 1 seed there. Wisconsin, and we've said this a bunch of times, but I think you say it because it rings true. Guards win in March, and man, it's hard to find a better tandem of guards nationally than Boyd and Blackwell.
The best backcourt in all of college basketball, which is why I love their draw. You look at that first game against High Point, and then maybe that second game against Arkansas, the thing it tells me is that no defense will be required until the Sweet 16, and that's when I love the Badgers most, when they can just get up and down and play basketball first to 100, especially in that game against High Point. They want to get in transition. Wisconsin's going to love that. And then you get to Arkansas. You get to Darius Acuff, one of the better players in all of college basketball. Nick Boyd's going to go toe-to-toe right there with him, going to talk trash, going to give him baskets, going to talk to the crowd, going to hype up the cheerleaders, going to do everything you need him to do. And then John Blackwell's going to also get you 30 points in that game as well. So if you look at that game against Arkansas, if Nolan Winter, if Billy Yauskis, if Austin Rapp and those guys can contain the glass, if they compete on the glass and maybe even win the glass, I like them in that matchup because they have 2 guards that can go get you 30 compared to Arkansas's 1 guard. And then you get to that game against Arizona, Dave, I'm taking Wisconsin because they're veterans, they're older, they're stronger, and again, they have 2 guards that can go get basket. And when you look at Arizona, as talented as they are, as physical as they are, they remind me sometimes of a Big Ten team. They still have young guards. And I know James Bradley is a really good player, but Nick Boyd is the better point guard in my opinion. And then when you get to that 2-guard position, you start talking about those freshmen, Pete, Berries, and those guys. That's where I'm taking John Blackwell to be the difference maker in that game against Arizona.
It's interesting because Arizona plays so differently than Wisconsin does. Arizona is going to try to pound the ball inside. They're a little bit of an anachronism. I mean, you just don't see many teams built that way successfully in this day and age of college basketball. Wisconsin is much more kind of the modern way that people are playing college hoops, which is shooting threes and getting twos at the rim. Arizona is much more of a 2-point focused team. You bring up a great point. Arizona's really young. Now, they are young,
super young,
and talented.
Yes.
But they are young, and so you do wonder a little bit, or I wonder a little bit about just kind of when push comes to shove and those lights get bright.
We start
young
spreading
guys
them out. We making threes.
haven't been there before.
They've never been spread out how you look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's going to get people because not too many teams this season has faced an opposing team that has 2 big men that can spread you out to shoot.
Yep.
You have 2 guards that can just go wiggle and get to the basket. This is going to be extremely interesting because Arizona's bigs, they're not that mobile.
And Rapp and Bill Yauskis really shot it incredibly well in Chicago. And then you got Nick Boyd, who's got Final Four experience. I mean, they're really intriguing. They are really, really intriguing. Okay, what about Illinois? Illinois opens up against Fran McCaffery and Penn. The Quakers win the Ivy League in extremely dramatic fashion. If you win that game, you get North Carolina likely. Unless you have an upset there, VCU, kind of a fashionable upset pick, actually. But Carolina, were you to play them, you'd have to play them in the Carolinas, obviously. But they have one of the biggest injuries in this entire bracket with Caleb Wilson out with a broken thumb. Again, if you advance, you'd end up in Houston, and you'd likely play Houston. That's a little bit of a tough draw. But what do you think of the Illini and how things shake out for them?
I love it. You love that game against Penn. You know Fran McCaffery, they want to play fast. They want to get up and down. And when you take Illinois in open space and you allow those guys to play free, Illinois is going to kill you on the offensive end. They're going to get whatever shot they want. And then at the end of the day, they're just too big, too talented, too powerful on the glass. And then you move on to UNC. I think UNC takes care of VCU. But without no Caleb Wilson, You got Vessar down low. You got Seth Trimble on the wing. But I'm taking Illinois because of their size and their ability to dominate the glass without Wilson out there. And then you get to Houston. You got to play harder because you know Houston, they're going to push you around a little bit. Illinois tends to not like it.
This is the matchup that I think would really concern me if I were Illinois, just the physicality of it. And we've talked about Illinois kind of has, I mean, the main identity is offensively. They have a lineup they can bring in that plays really well defensively, but as you've talked about, then they're kind of limited offensively when they bring that group in. So I think it's fascinating to see if they get to that Houston game because it is a real contrast in styles. Kelvin Sampson and those guys came so agonizingly close to winning the national championship a year ago. They'd have a home crowd behind them. So it's a tough matchup, no doubt, for Illinois, but we have seen the Illini win high-level games. We just haven't seen much of that lately. I've mentioned this a couple times. Last 5 NCAA tournament teams they have played, they have lost to. Now, 4 of those games were in overtime, in fairness. So let's keep it in the South and check out Nebraska. Everyone who follows college basketball at all knows the storyline with Nebraska. They have famously never won an NCAA tournament game. They're 0-8 all-time, the only power conference school that hasn't won one. They get Troy in their opener. The Trojans are the Sun Belt champs, a team that can score with the very best of them. They've gone over 90 points 9 times this year. What do you think about Fred Hoiberg's crew in getting that elusive first win?
I love it because you look at Troy, a very offensive-minded team. They want to get up and down. They want to play in the 90s, but when you get to March, things start to slow down. And you look at Nebraska, the way they defend you, the way they get back in transition, this is going to be a half-court game, and it's going to come down to toughness. It's going to come down to the glass, and it's going to come down to half-court offensive execution. And that's where I like Nebraska in that game. And then you move on to Vandy, another team that wants to get up and down, another team that wants to play fast-paced. But I love how Fred Hoiberg this season has been able to slow teams down. At times, Nebraska, they're not even going to the offensive glass. They're just sending 5 guys back in transition to force you to play in the half court. So I love that game. I love Sam Hoiberg against Tyler Tanner. I think Sam's going to win that matchup, and then you get to Florida. And again, I'm taking Nebraska because I've been with my guys all season. If you get good production out of Rink Mass, down low on the block, that is no answer for Alex Conda. Alex Conda cannot handle him down low. You think about Nebraska and that quick turnaround, the way they defend, that is tough to deal with.
Husker fans would love that. Honestly, I think everyone would be thrilled with one win, and then everything from there is gravy. But, I mean, you look at your 4 seed, you're supposed to get through to the Sweet 16 based on seed, and how amazing would that be? It's the second highest seed ever for Nebraska. We talk about not having ever won an NCAA tournament game. They haven't really been in a great position to win them. They've often been double-digit seeds, but here in a great spot. And, man, it'd be an incredible story. If they win that first game, they'd also set a school record for victories with that win. The other team in that region is Iowa. The Hawkeyes taking on Clemson. This, to me, is 2 teams that are somewhat mirror images of one another. And Brad Brownell's team loves to just defend the heck out of you. And we know that that's in the DNA of Iowa and Ben McCollum as well. Slow it down, play good defense, take good shots.
It's like that Spider-Man meme when they're both looking at each other, pointing back and forth. But the only difference between Iowa and Clemson is Bennett Sturts. Bennett Sturts is a lottery pick. He's going to play at the next level for a long, long time. So if this game is in the 60s and the 70s and it's close throughout and it's coming down to 1 or 2 possessions, I'm giving the basketball to Bennett Sturts. And I trust Bennett Sturts more than maybe any point guard in all of college basketball to go win me a game in any gym in all of America. It could be at the park. It could be at the YMCA. It could be in March Madness. Bennett Sturts is one of those dudes that you trust in these moments. I think they take care of Clemson. They get to Florida, and then you see what happens.
I do think often, especially these NCAA tournament games that are really closely matched, 8-9 games, that type of thing, sometimes it does come down to who's got the best player on the floor.
Who's the guy?
And Iowa's going to have the best player on the floor in that game. And Clemson's a little banged up, too. Their center tore his ACL in the ACC tournament and is out for the year. So that, as sad a story as it is, works in Iowa's favor. I remember last year Nebraska won the inaugural college basketball crown. It was a jumping-off point to a very good year. You have 2 Big Ten teams in the field this year. It was announced yesterday. Minnesota is going to face Baylor on April 1st. Rutgers takes on Creighton April 2nd. The championship game is April 5th. It's all in Vegas, and all those games on Fox and FS1.